The cold wind of Monday morning swept through the busy streets of downtown Chicago. People shuffled into the subway station, most with their heads down, earbuds in, coffees in hand, eyes on their phones. In the crowd, no one stood out, except maybe the tall black man in a navy blue trench coat and polished leather shoes. His name was Isaiah Coleman, 42, a quietly charismatic man with sharp eyes and a presence that turned heads in boardrooms, but not in the subway. Here, he was just another face. And today he was late. Isaiah usually had a driver or took meetings virtually, but this morning his car service was delayed, and he didn't want to miss the opening of the Global Innovation Conference, a prestigious international event where he was scheduled to deliver the keynote address. Ironically, the topic was breaking barriers in corporate leadership. As he descended into the crowded underground station, Isaiah kept to himself. He didn't look like a CEO today. Without his usual entourage, name badge, or the glow of PowerPoint behind him, he looked like what most assumed. Just another black man in a suit, in a rush. The train arrived with a roar, and the crowd surged forward. Isaiah stepped in and stood quietly near the center of the car. He held a leather briefcase in one hand, and his phone in the other. That's when he heard it. "Watch it," a woman muttered as she bumped into him. "Why are they always crowding in?" Another voice added, "Just loud enough to be heard, but vague enough to deny. Should have stayed in your neighborhood." Someone else snorted under their breath. Isaiah raised his eyes and scanned the car. A group of passengers, 3 men in business casual clothes and 1 woman, all white, stood together smirking, whispering. He knew the tone. He'd heard it before, but it still stung. Years of success, a Forbes cover, a multi-million-dollar company. None of it mattered in this moment. To them, he was just a them, one of those people. Not a peer, not a leader. Certainly not someone worthy of respect. Isaiah didn't respond. He'd learned long ago that his silence often spoke louder than his words. But then, a more direct insult pierced the moment. "Bet you're not even going to work. Probably going to sell something on the train." That drew a few chuckles from their group. Isaiah looked straight ahead. Not at them. Not at anyone. He got off 2 stops early. Not because he was afraid. Because he knew something better was coming. And he needed to be ready. Because in less than 1 hour, those same people would be sitting in velvet seats at the convention center, sipping free coffee and nodding along as they listened to the guests of honor. They didn't know yet, but they would. The glass doors of the International Convention Center opened smoothly as Isaiah stepped in, brushing a few drops of rain off his coat. The place was massive floor-to-ceiling windows, a marble-finished lobby, and large banners that read, "Global Innovation Conference 2025, Redefining Leadership in a Changing World." A few well-dressed attendees walked past, their conference badges glinting. Staff members in sleek uniforms greeted guests with professional smiles. Isaiah nodded politely to a few of them, heading straight to the private speaker's lounge behind the main stage. There, a young assistant looked up from her tablet. "Good morning, sir. Name, Isaiah Coleman," he replied calmly. She paused, did a quick double take. Then her eyes widened. She straightened her posture and stood. "Oh, yes, Mr. Coleman. You're our keynote speaker. We've been expecting you. My apologies for not recognizing you." Isaiah smiled faintly. He was used to it, especially without his signature frame glasses or security nearby. Invisibility was both a weapon and a curse. As she led him toward the main hall, Isaiah glanced at the massive digital screen above the stage. His face appeared in full color, alongside bold text. Isaiah Coleman, CEO of Coleman Strategics, breaking barriers in corporate leadership. Down in the audience, hundreds of corporate leaders, journalists, students, and investors filled the seats. And in the third row, sipping complimentary lattes and laughing softly among themselves, sat the same group from the subway. They didn't notice him yet. Inside the backstage corridor, Isaiah stood in front of a full-length mirror. He adjusted his jacket, rolled his shoulders, rehearsed nothing. He didn't need to. He'd written the words weeks ago, but now, something was different. Today, it wasn't just a speech. It was personal. Back in the auditorium, the lights dimmed. A confident voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker for this year's conference. A trailblazer in innovation, social equity, and corporate transformation. Mr. Isaiah Coleman. Applause erupted. The spotlight hit center stage. And the moment the man from the subway walked out in front of hundreds of elites, the air changed. Gasps, whispered confusion. The group in the third row froze. One of them, the same man who'd mocked Isaiah that morning, lowered his cup, eyes wide. Another leaned toward him and whispered something that looked like, "No way." That's him. Isaiah paused behind the podium. He scanned the audience, slowly. His eyes landed, for a brief moment, on the very faces that had treated him like less than human just an hour ago. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The room fell completely silent. Then Isaiah began, "Before I begin my prepared remarks, I'd like to share a short story. Something that happened to me this morning." And every eye in the room remained fixed on him. He hadn't even gotten to the real speech yet, but they were already listening. Isaiah stood at the podium, his hands resting gently on the edge. He looked calm, but his eyes held a fire that everyone in the room could feel, even those who didn't know why. He leaned slightly forward and spoke, clearly and slowly. "This morning, I took the subway here, not because I had to, but because I wanted to remember." A quiet murmur stirred in the audience. I stood in a crowded car. No one knew my name. No one knew my position. To the people around me, I was just another commuter, a tall black man in a dark coat, carrying a briefcase. He paused, and that was all they needed to know. People shifted in their seats. Phones were lowered. Eyebrows rose. Even the media team in the back leaned forward. They whispered things, passive-aggressive slurs. One even suggested I wasn't going to work, that I was there to sell something. You know, like those stereotypes people pretend they've grown out of. In the third row, the group from the subway froze. One man lowered his gaze. The woman slowly crossed her arms, stiffly. Isaiah didn't look directly at them. He didn't need to. I didn't respond. I got off 2 stops early. Not because I was angry, but because I've seen this before. I've lived this before. He scanned the room. You see, the thing about leadership is that it doesn't come from titles. It doesn't come from wealth, or the suits we wear, or the size of our LinkedIn following. It comes from how we show up, especially when no one is watching. The room was dead silent. I am Isaiah Coleman. I built my first business in my mother's garage, where the electricity often got cut off. I got my first job by lying about having a college degree, just so someone would give me a seat at the table. And I spent the last 2 decades proving I deserved to be there. He stepped slightly to the side of the podium. But this morning, none of that mattered. Not the millions in investments I've secured. Not the scholarships I fund. Not the hundreds of jobs I created. Because to a few people on that train, I was still just a black man. And that, to them, meant less. A wave of discomfort washed over the room. A few people cleared their throats. Others shifted awkwardly in their seats. But Isaiah's voice never faltered. Let me be very clear. This is not a speech about victimhood. I am not here to ask for pity. He looked directly into the front rows now, confident, unwavering. This is a speech about visibility, about how easy it is to overlook people who don't look like what you expect, about how many Isaiahs are out there, on subways, in waiting rooms, in elevators, being judged by the covers of books that were never read. A pause. Then, and I'm telling you now, those books hold power. Applause began, soft at first, then louder, then rising. The cameras zoomed in. The moderators offstage looked at each other, realizing that something far greater than a keynote address was unfolding. Isaiah raised a hand gently, calming the applause. My story this morning isn't unique, and that's the problem. I just happen to be on this stage. But I promise you, there are people on your teams, in your companies, even in your homes, who experience this kind of dismissal daily. He stepped back to the podium. So, as you sit to the panels today and nod at the buzzwords diversity, inclusion, equity, I ask you to remember something. The next time you're in a subway or a hallway or an elevator, ask yourself, what would I think of this person if I didn't know their title? Because that answer reveals everything about you. The room erupted. Standing ovation. But Isaiah didn't smile. Not yet, because he wasn't finished. The applause still echoed through the auditorium as Isaiah calmly waited for the room to settle again. He didn't rush. He knew silence was power, and he had the room in his hands now. "We talk a lot about leadership, don't we?" he began again, this time more conversationally. "We put on posters, on LinkedIn banners. We quoted in team meetings. But most people still confuse leadership with visibility." He paused and looked around the hall. "A corner office isn't leadership. A CEO title isn't leadership. Leadership is the decisions you make when there's no incentive to do the right thing, except that it's the right thing." Several heads nodded. Others sat frozen, absorbing every word. Isaiah continued, "I've worked in rooms where I was the only black man, the only person of color, the only one who didn't go to an Ivy League school. And let me tell you something, those rooms aren't built for us. They never were." He said it calmly, without bitterness, but with conviction. The weight of his words settled like bricks in the chest of everyone present. You want to know what prejudice looks like at the top? It's being asked if you're lost before a board meeting. It's being mistaken for security when you arrive early to your own office. It's having your decisions second-guessed until someone validates them. A few executives in the audience lowered their eyes. It's when your white counterpart walks into a pitch meeting and is called visionary, while you're called aggressive. It's when your calm tone is labeled cold, but there's a seen as decisive. He let that sink in. I'm not here to name names. I don't need to, because everyone in this room has either seen it or done it. Another silence swept the audience. Then Isaiah's tone shifted, softer now, almost intimate. "Here's the truth. I wasn't born confident. I wasn't born a leader. I was shaped by every closed door, every fake smile, every moment I had to prove again that I belonged." He took a breath. "But that's also where I learned something powerful, that our greatest strength is not in how many people admire us. It's in how we carry ourselves when no one does." There was a heaviness in the room now, but it wasn't discomfort, it was reflection. Isaiah's words weren't just stories. They were mirrors. "This isn't just about race," he continued. "This is about bias, visible and invisible. It's about class, accent, gender, age. It's about how we look at people and decide their value in seconds. We all do it. I do it. You do it." He stepped slightly away from the podium again. "But here's the difference. Great leaders catch themselves in that moment and choose better." At that, a murmur of agreement rippled across the room. If you run a company, look around your leadership table. Does everyone look like you? Talk like you? Think like you? Then maybe it's not just a meritocracy. Maybe it's a mirror. Gasps, some laughter, nervous, but acknowledging. Don't just post about diversity during Black History Month. Don't just put a person of color on a panel and call it inclusion. If the only black voices you amplify are the ones who already fit in, then you're not changing the system, you're decorating it. Now the applause came again, stronger this time. No one remained indifferent. Isaiah raised his hand gently. Real inclusion doesn't come from checking boxes. It comes from opening doors, especially for those who've been told all their lives that the door was never meant for them. He returned to the center. And for those of you who saw me this morning and thought you knew who I was, you weren't entirely wrong. I am someone from the margins. I am someone who's been underestimated. He paused. But I'm also the reason this conference exists. I'm the face of innovation. I'm the man your teams look up to. I am your keynote speaker. Another standing ovation. Louder, longer. But again, Isaiah remained composed, because the next words would be the ones no one would forget. The applause began to fade, but not the energy. The atmosphere inside the conference hall had changed. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was reverence. Some attendees wiped their eyes. Others nodded silently, reflecting. The group from the subway remained frozen in their seats. None dared move, speak, or look away. Isaiah leaned into the podium, his tone calmer now, but no less powerful. You've heard my story. Maybe parts of it made you uncomfortable. That's good. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in tension. He paused, then continued. But I didn't come here just to provoke a response. I came here with a challenge. The audience quieted again, sensing the shift. It's not enough to know better. You have to do better. Because awareness without action is just performance. He clicked a remote in his hand, and a slide appeared behind him. A simple white background with bold black letters. Coleman Initiative. Building leadership from the ground up, Isaiah stepped away from the podium, walking slowly across the stage. Starting today, my company is launching a new leadership accelerator for marginalized professionals, Black, brown, first-gen, immigrant, disabled, formerly incarcerated. People who are brilliant but invisible. People who have been systemically denied access to power. Gasps. Then applause. He held up a hand. This isn't charity. This is strategy. Because the next wave of global innovation won't come from where you think. It'll come from people who have spent their entire lives solving problems no one else even sees. He clicked again. New slide. $10 million seed fund. 3-year mentorship. Corporate partnership program. Open application. No degree required. Now the room was electric. We'll match them with mentors. Invest in their ideas. Put them in rooms they were never invited to. And we'll hold companies accountable. No more pipeline problem excuses. Then he looked directly at the crowd. And I'm inviting every single one of you in this room to be part of it. If you run a company, sponsor a fellow. If you lead a team, nominate someone overlooked. If you sit on a board, open a seat. Another wave of clapping. Louder. Firmer. But Isaiah wasn't finished. Look, I know what some of you are thinking. Isn't this unfair? Shouldn't everyone earn their place? I hear it all the time. But let me ask you, how many of you earned your first opportunity purely on merit? He let that hang in the air, or was it a handshake? A family connection? A school name? A face that fit the mold? Now the room was silent again. The unspoken truths were loud. Meritocracy is only real when everyone starts at the same starting line. Until then, we build bridges. He clicked one last time. A new image filled the screen. A young black woman in a hoodie giving a TED Talk. A man in a wheelchair leading a team meeting. An immigrant family celebrating the launch of a product. This is what leadership looks like. It doesn't always wear a suit. It doesn't always speak polished English. But it knows struggle. It knows resilience. And it knows how to build. A few in the audience began to rise again. Isaiah raised his voice not louder but deeper. Don't leave this room feeling inspired. Leave it feeling obligated. Because inspiration fades. Action echoes. He returned to the podium. His final words were clear, deliberate. I was disrespected this morning, not because I failed, but because I succeeded in a system that never expected me to. My story shouldn't be rare. It should be normal. And I intend to make it that way. Standing ovation. This time, the whole room rose. Some cried. Some clapped like their hands were on fire. Others stood in silent awe, feeling the truth resonate in their chests. Isaiah closed his eyes for a brief moment, not out of pride, but because he had finally said the thing he had waited years to say. The auditorium was still buzzing long after Isaiah stepped off stage. People didn't rush for coffee or check their phones like usual. They lingered in conversations, introspective, raw, real. Something had shifted. It wasn't just the impact of a powerful speech. It was a confrontation with truth. Isaiah hadn't just inspired them. He had held up a mirror. Backstage, organizers approached him with tearful thank yous. Panelists scheduled to follow him whispered nervously, wondering how they could possibly speak after that. Journalists flooded the hallway. Everyone wanted a quote, but Isaiah didn't seek attention. He walked silently toward the exit, coat over his shoulder, briefcase in hand, exactly as he had entered the subway that morning. Except now, everyone knew who he was. By evening, hashtag Isaiah Coleman speech was trending worldwide. Clips of his keynote were shared by CEOs, celebrities, professors, and students. Excerpts were quoted on news channels. Podcasts dissected every line. One clip in particular, the part where he said, "Inspiration fades, action echoes," went viral within hours. The most unexpected twist? A woman from the subway, the very one who had whispered a slur under her breath that morning, posted a selfie from the conference with the caption, "I was one of those people, and I will carry that shame for the rest of my life." Today, I learned who Isaiah Coleman really is. But more importantly, I learned who I was. And who I don't want to be anymore. Her post reached millions. Days passed. Isaiah didn't speak publicly about the incident. He didn't need to. The world was speaking for him now. His Coleman initiative received more than 10,000 applications in the first week. Dozens of companies signed up to partner. Some even overhauled their leadership pipelines to accommodate what they called the Coleman Standard. But perhaps the most profound shift came quietly, in office buildings, in HR meetings, in boardrooms, where senior leaders began asking new questions. Who's not at this table? Are we hiring for excellence or familiarity? What biases are shaping our perception of leadership? And in subway cars, where strangers now look twice, not with suspicion, but with humility. Back in his office, Isaiah sat by the window, watching the city below, the same skyline he had grown up under, once feeling like it was unreachable. Now it was his canvas. His assistant entered the room. "You've got a call. It's the White House. They want you on the task force for equitable hiring reforms." Isaiah nodded slowly. "Tell them I'll call back in 10. He turned to his computer, opened a list of scholarship recipients for the first wave of the Coleman Initiative. Each name represented a life that would walk through a door he once had to kick down. That night, at a small community center on the South Side, Isaiah gave a speech to a group of high school students. No stage, no cameras, just folding chairs and warm lighting. He told them the same story he told the world. But this time, he ended with something different. Don't let the world define you by your lowest moment or their worst assumptions. What they see is not who you are. And what you carry, your culture, your struggle, your truth, that's your superpower. One boy raised his hand. "What if nobody sees that?" Isaiah smiled. "Then speak so clearly that the world can't ignore you." Isaiah didn't just deliver a keynote. He rewrote the rules of leadership. From the subway to the stage, from humiliation to hope, his story reminded the world of one simple truth. Real power isn't about being recognized. It's about what you do when you aren't. And with that, Isaiah Coleman didn't just walk out of the subway that morning. He walked into history.